Many years ago, I was diagnosed with bone cancer. And at the time, I had an opportunity to talk to a Buddhist teacher about why this happened to me. I asked him, how could this have happened to me? He said it was karma, that I had done something bad and that's why it happened. I told him, how could something that I did have caused something so awful to happen to me? I'm generally a good person. So he said, maybe it was something unintentional, maybe you drove down the street and hit a dog and that's why it happened. This answer was so unsatisfying for me. I just felt that it had to be something deeper. And karma has become a very popular topic these days, but there are also so many questions. Like, is karma real? And is there a reason for everything that happens to us? What actually is a good or a bad deed? I sat together with Kabbalist Dr. Laitman to ask him all of these questions. Here's what he said. Hello everyone, welcome, and hello, Dr. Laitman. Today we'd like to talk to you about a very popular term that we hear a lot, and it's called karma. Karma, as we know, it comes from Buddhism, from Hinduism. It actually means action, and what it talks about is that there is an effect to every action, thought, and intention that we have in our lives. So if we do good deeds, if we do good things, we'll get good karma, we'll have good results, good events happening for us. And if we do bad things, if we have bad thoughts and intentions, we get the opposite, we get bad results. So actually it's like there's some sort of system that's recording all of our actions and we see the results in our life. And we'd like to ask you today about karma. Is it real? And according to the wisdom of Kabbalah, is it true that everything comes back to us, that there's an implication for every action that we do?
Of course. We're inside the will to receive, which is actually the nature of creation. This will to receive exists, we exist in it, we're parts of this great big will to receive. All of our actions, thoughts, whatever we do on every level, they all come from the will to receive, and of course everything's registered in it, and everything begins and ends in it. And so, if we can use the word karma, because the wisdom of Kabbalah doesn't use this word, it uses other definitions. But yeah, it exists, of course. As it says, everything you do is written down.
Where is it written exactly? What is the system that is tracking us?
We're inside of it, meaning we're inside the will to receive. That was created by the Creator. And this is the only thing that exists. There's the upper force and the desire that He has created, and we're parts of this desire.
If I did a bad action, if I did something wrong in my life, will that have a negative result later on?
We have to understand what good and bad is. It's all according to the laws of that reality, karma. I'm using this word cautiously because I don't exactly know what people mean by it.
What are good and bad deeds, according to Kabbalah?
Very simple. A good deed is an action that connects everyone. Each of us is a bearer of a certain desire, and so that all of our desires will be connected. And then when they'll have to connect, they'll have to correct themselves in order to connect, because to begin with, we're hostile toward each other. And therefore, a person that works on himself in order to be connected with others in a good way, he acts to the benefit of the general desire. And if so, he improves his own life and improves others. And this is actually his reward.
What we know is that doing good is helping others, giving to them.
Good deeds might not exactly be what we consider as good deeds in this world. Maybe by simply doing good to someone else, I'm not acting to their benefit.
It's because I don't know.
There has to be a goal-oriented thought and action here.
What does the system actually require of us?
First to understand it, feel it, first to act in order to realize it correctly.
So what are bad deeds?
Whatever doesn't go with the system toward its goal, which is for all the created beings to be connected in goodwill.
How does the system actually work?
It's operated by the upper force. The upper force is utter bestowal and love, connection, and the system is operated by this upper force from a state where it is opposite to the upper force and to a state where it completely reaches equivalence of form with the upper force, becomes like him. And we're inside the system as its parts. Our connection is according to what the system determines, and if we act in favor of our mutual connection, we influence the system for the better and also our fate, or vice versa.
I'll give you an example. A lot of years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer, and at the time I was studying with a Buddhist teacher, and I asked him, why did this happen to me? And he told me that it was karma, that it was probably something bad that I'd done, and that's why it happened. And I told him, but what bad could I have done? I, generally I'm a good person. I don't intend anything bad for anyone. So he said maybe it was something unintentional, maybe you drove down the street and accidentally hit a dog and didn't even notice, and this is why it happened to you. So obviously this answer did not satisfy me.
Because it's really incorrect.
So why do bad things happen to people?
It's not that bad things happen to people. It's the revelation of that karma, as you call it, and we have to correct it. That when that desire is revealed, it's always revealed in its bad form. And we have to push that general desire by our own actions toward the good, toward connection. That's why bad things always happen.
So what you're saying is that bad things happen so that we make some sort of correction? What is this correction?
We have to correct these things to make them better, for us to be closer to each other, for us to reach a mutual understanding, decision, proximity, mutuality, mutual actions. It's actually the process that this will to receive has to go through from its initial broken state. If you've ever heard about the sin of the tree of knowledge, the shattering of Adam HaRishon, literally meaning the first Adam, and until we rebuild this entire broken system correctly.
So for those of us who don't really know this story, and it sounds a bit detached even, how can I interpret correctly what happens to me in my life?
Very simple. Work toward love another as thyself, which is also not that clear. But still, it says about something, that we have to be connected in a good and nice way.
You're saying I have to understand that the things that are happening to me are actually pointing me towards some sort of correction.
You're given an opportunity to act, not according to the way things are revealed in you, but to the contrary, to correct them.
Things that are bringing me closer to?
Yeah.
Is there punishment in the wisdom of Kabbalah?
There's no punishment. The system doesn't work that way. What seems to us as a punishment is also a correction.
Right, like we said before, an opportunity.
There are no punishments. But in order to lead a person to a better scrutiny, in order for him to correct what he has to correct, then he's burdened with something and he calls it a punishment. But actually, it's the revelation of the actions that he has to take, which is a correction.
So how does a person not feel guilty about something that happened to him that is the result of something bad he might have done?
From what we're saying, then no one's guilty of anything.
Why?
Because to begin with, it comes to us in the form of a broken system. And we have to correct it. Therefore, we're not to blame. It's like we give a little child Lego or something broken, and we want for him to connect it, to repair it. Like a puzzle, for example. And this is how we learn. You can't learn about something unless you break and rebuild it.
What exactly is broken in the system?
We're broken. None of us understands the others, because our desires are egoistic. And we don't want to understand or get closer to others to as if clothing them.
That is to say that we actually are more focused on ourselves. We feel what's happening within us rather than what's happening in others.
Yes.
That's why we're broken.
Our connection's broken.
How do you fix it?
This is what Kabbalah is about. It's the wisdom of correction. That we have to begin building small groups in which we can realize this correction between us, meaning. And the main correction is done by the reforming light. That we draw a special upper force from the corrected form of the desire. Let's call it the corrected karma that already exists. Only we still don't attain it. And from there, we can draw a force that this is where our future corrected form exists. We can draw this force from there, and it'll correct us and pull us to that corrected future form. And this is how we can hasten our development and reach the good.
What does this corrected form look like?
That all of us lose our ego, our sense of self. And instead of that, we start feeling that all of us are connected as parts of one integral system, a kind of global system that even the still, the vegetative, and the animate are integrated in it, only that they have no free choice, but only people do. And also among people, there are those that are more or less independent, but eventually everyone has to connect into one will to receive that consists of many individual desires, that each of them became corrected, that it wants to be connected with everyone else, truly as one man and one heart.
So then the Kabbalist actually feels that he's one with nature, with humanity, with this whole system around him?
Yes and no. He feels where he is, and what does he still have to correct?
So all our actions, good and bad, are actually how we point ourselves towards this unity that you're speaking of?
Our future unity.
You talked about free choice. What is this free choice?
To head toward it, or to deal with our individual, egoistic, narrow will to receive. This is what our free choice is, this or that.
You also said that if something bad happens to someone, it's actually an opportunity. So how can one realize this opportunity correctly?
It's something that a person can't do on his own. He has to enter a group. And in the group, he has to understand how the entire system works, because it's the method of connection. So a person can't be on his own. It's preferable to have groups of 10 people, and then there's the method, meaning what do we have to do inside the group, what kind of relations should we have, how should we connect, talk, act, study, learn, scrutinize, examine ourselves. Are we closer or more distant from each other? This is how the entire work is in a so-called 10. Usually it's preferable for there to be 10 people that want to connect this way, and then in their connection they can suit themselves to the general upper system that includes all of nature in it. And then inside this 10, they can examine and learn and inquire and understand and connect themselves with the whole of nature.
Actually, when I read about karma, I read that it could be something that has something more to do with our internal state, meaning that if I am self-centered, if I'm egoistic, if all I do is think of myself, I will experience internal suffering. Whereas if I think of others and free myself of my self-centeredness, I will be free of that suffering. Is that closer to what you're saying?
I'm not really an expert in karma, and I was never engaged in Buddhism or any of its branches. I think that it's not exactly correct, because the wisdom of Kabbalah, it brings us the reforming light. It's a very special upper means that comes from outside of our world. It's a force that works on a person and raises him above his egoistic nature. And then a person transcends to a point where he doesn't need meditation, where he doesn't need to even perform any special corporeal actions. He doesn't need any special lifestyle. All these things happen inside of him, according to his intention. This is one thing. Another thing is that the main thing is that it's done by that so-called reforming light that doesn't simply make a big egoist into a small egoist, so much so that a person thinks that he's no longer inside the ego and he's willing to sit all day long and meditate. No, the wisdom of Kabbalah demands of a person to publicize the method, circulate it, to connect as many people as possible to it, to organize them, get them together, for him to connect all of mankind, and not that he can sit on his own on some hilltop in a special posture and think thoughts that are as disconnected as possible from this world. The wisdom of Kabbalah is very realistic and practical.
So it doesn't cancel a person's ego, but rather direct it correctly.
Furthermore, because the more we advance in the realization of the wisdom of Kabbalah, on the one hand, from the so-called left line, we become more egoistic, because anyone who's greater has greater desires. Meaning that if I know how to correct my small ego, then from the general system, I get a greater ego.
Kabbalah makes me more egoistic?
Yes, on the one hand. On the other hand, it gives me the tools to deal with this ego so that we can transcend it, rise above it, and this way we can correct the ego more and more. Therefore, whoever is engaged in the wisdom of Kabbalah doesn't feel that he's already in some kind of nirvana or something, in some exalted states that are disconnected from reality, but to the contrary. We enter deeper and deeper into the will to receive, deeper and deeper into the evil reality, and there we cause greater and greater corrections.
You mentioned earlier that everything happens within our intention. So what is more important here? The intention that we have behind an action or the action itself?
For us, the intention and the action are one and the same. There's no difference between the intention and the action. Because by the intentions, we operate reality. We don't have to do anything with our hands or legs, unless it's in order to organize people, for them to study together, and for them to come into closer contact with the wisdom of Kabbalah. But actually, probably like in these methods and these teachings, it's all about the inner realization. It also says so in our books that Abraham, our patriarch, he gave his students the method of the wisdom of Kabbalah in a certain form and send them eastwards. Maybe it refers to all of those teachings that later were realized in India and so on.
All of these concepts that sound similar to what you're saying are actually coming from the same source?
Yes, I think so. Even in Japan and, well, China, it's a bit different. It's Confucius. And later, it changed somewhat. But more or less, all of the Eastern methods, teachings, all the nations there, this is how they are. And to begin with, this is how it was also with Islam and Christianity. Only later on, It all went through certain changes. Also, Judaism went through many changes. But the basis for all of them is the wisdom of Kabbalah.
So maybe in conclusion, to really understand what the wisdom of Kabbalah says, what are the good deeds that will make sure that we have a good and pleasant future?
This is a problem. We already understand that we can't understand or judge good deeds according to our corporeal, egoistic mind, but according to some higher standard, which is disconnected from the egoistic human nature. And therefore, first of all, we have to rise above our own nature, transcend it, and only then can we determine what good and bad is, in order not to be wrong. And therefore, the wisdom of Kabbalah, through many initial stages, leads us to a state where we come out of our ego, rise above it. It's called coming out of Egypt, coming out from under the rule of Pharaoh, of our ego. And then, when we already come out of our ego, then it explains further when we become free of it, from its control. How can we then see the world correctly? Because before that, for sure, we see it in a distorted way. Our ego distorts everything. And then we can already make the correct calculations and say what's good, and then decide what's truly to the benefit of man, mankind, the world, and creation.
That means that if I did a lot of good deeds,
how can you know that these are good deeds?
That is what I really don't know at all. It's what we need to learn.
Right, but don't think that if you do a good deed, that you'll get a good response.
Why?
This is also a problem. Because all of these methods, these other teachings, they don't deepen as the wisdom of Kabbalah does. The wisdom of Kabbalah says simply, if you've correctly corrected a certain desire of yours, you're shown an even greater corrupted desire for you to correct it. Meaning, after a good action of correcting something, and now you want to egoistically enjoy its fruits, right? So you're shown an even greater corrupted desire, meaning you feel even worse instead of feeling better. Where's my reward? So the reward is that you're given a greater, more corrupted, evil inclination, desire, and you feel that the world is a darker and more corrupted place, and why do I deserve this? Meaning we have to understand that here we all the time have to be ready to correctly perceive what's going on above our ego. And this is something that you can't do on your own, so you need a society, at least a 10, this is the optimum measure, that then we can keep ourselves and direct ourselves correctly and understand why are the corruptions revealed after the good deeds. It's a completely different approach than you started our show with.
What I'm understanding is that the good is actually the better opportunity or challenge, the more challenging opportunity. But is it worth it? Was it worth all this effort?
It's like in school. If I succeed, I'm given a harder exercise. And I remember I used to play, so every time I was given harder exercises because I succeeded in the previous ones.
So actually reality is a kind of university of life that is teaching us. Is it worth it?
If I look at the end goal that everyone has to achieve, and the main thing for me is to acquire the force of bestowal upon the force of reception, meaning despite it. So all the time, on the one hand, I'm walking in greater and greater darkness and sorrow that's revealed in my vessels of reception. On the other hand, I acquire the light that lifts me above this darkness, my ego. And this way I consist of both lines, the good and the bad. And I build myself above them, higher and higher. I don't need the bad, and also I don't need the good. The main thing is that I rise above, I'm more connected to the upper force by these two forces of good and bad. This is my reward.
So who is this person who...
This is called man, Adam in Hebrew, that middle line, that point where I connect the good and the bad together in order to achieve adhesion, to be like the Creator, the upper force. This is called Adam, man in Hebrew, also meaning similar to the Creator.
Is this the same unity that you described earlier with all of humanity and nature?
So as a result of our unity, we also unite with Him.
It sounds like we have a lot to aspire to and to learn.
We have to learn and realize. Good luck.
Thank you very much, and thank you to our viewers. Until next time, see you soon.